So with that, Mr. Chair, I would ask Mr. Dale to describe what is proposed in the bill and the reasoning that is behind it.
Thank you, Representative Hilty. Mr. Dale, if you could identify yourself for the record, please proceed.
Chairman Hoppy and members of the Congress Committee, my name is Byron Dale. As he's correct, I have studied this for many years. I have authored 4 books on this subject. I'm internationally known author now. My book is sold in 9 different countries other than the United States. And we have a major problem. All I've got to do is turn on the news and see it. We have an overabundance of debt and a real shortage of money. And as Representative Hilty said, we have exponential, but you know the exponential is only on the debt because of the interest. It's not on the money supply. I have before me Charlie just got off the Federal Reserve Board website, and it says the M1 money supply is less than 2 trillion. M2 money supply is about 8 trillion, almost 9 trillion. But the total debt is around 57 trillion. That's not counting unfunded obligations. Now it's clear that we have a lot more debt than we do money, and he is correct. At this time, all money is created as interest-bearing debt. And I have that also from the library, from many sources, and I'm sure all of you have seen my little yellow flyer that I hand out, and I think I spoke to at least 90% of the members of this room at some time. And I have done a lot of researches. I have letters from the Congress, letters from the Treasury, letters from the Library of Congress, Federal Reserve Debt System, and active in the Department of Commerce here in Minnesota that says, yes, money is created as loans. Now, to really get a solution to any problem, you have to really understand the problem. And our problem is a real shortage of money and a great surplus of debt, interest-bearing debt, by the way, which he complements the debt growth. So this bill is so simple. It's like can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me in a minute. Never mind. Economist said that this money system is so simple, just the simpleness of it kind of confuses the mind. And that's kind of the way my bill is. It's so absolutely simple that it seems hard to get your mind around. Because the only way you can overcome a shortage of debt, a shortage of money and a surplus of debt, is to increase the money without increasing the debt. And that's what this bill does. And we're very fortunate that we can actually do that here in Minnesota at this point in time. And unlike Representative Hobby, I expect to see this bill passed and the law before this session is over. Of course, I'm probably more optimistic than most people. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. And it's a very simple thing because our state chartered banks create money every day when they make loans. So there's no question they can create money, and by their own definition, they create it out of thin air. So now the simple thing to do is say, let's just make one small change in the law, and that's all we have to do. And now we pass the law that they must create some money for the benefit of the state. And spend it into circulation, and it goes into circulation in a way that benefits almost everyone in the state, and that is by rebuilding and upgrading our transportation system. And it's that simple, and that's the only thing that would change. We wouldn't have to change the central banking law, we wouldn't have to change anything. And in fact, I recently, through another person, received an email from the Department of Commerce, and this bill was particularly about because the bill says the state bank would not be subject to reserves, and he could not get that through his head, so he sent it to Commerce, and they wrote back and said, well, state banks are subject to the reserve requirements, but that is not the issue here. And they are so right, because reserve requirements apply only when loans are made, and this bill does not require any loans to be made. So see, basically all the laws in the books about money don't apply to what we're trying to do. We're going to do, as Atkins says, something that's never been done before, and that is create, well, at least not since we actually quit using gold and silver for money and harder. But this bill simply calls for the state banks, which would be a benefit to the banks, a benefit to the people of the state, and to provide for better transportation by simply changing one thing. They now create money exactly the way they do, only they would spend a certain portion of it into circulation so people could earn it when they rebuilt and did the construction work on the roads. And it's that simple. And it benefits everyone. There is no losers in this whatsoever. The banks keep right on doing what they do. The only difference is now you would not only get increasing ability to fund your roads, you'd get increasing the money supply, and the banks also would gain because now they wouldn't have so many bad loans. And they tell me right now that about 33% of the banks in Minnesota are in financial trouble, on the watch list. So in fact, I heard that actual statement here in a Congress hearing over in the Senate. And what I'd like to do, this bill is so simple that people just can't seem to grasp it can be that simple. In fact, I've had so many tell me, people, well, if it's this simple, why didn't somebody do it before? Well, actually, it's quite simple to build a plane now, but it wasn't when the Wright brothers first proposed it. And there's many other things. I think there's a lot of people here that think it's quite simple to use really complicated Atlantic equipment. And it's not so simple for me. It's not my thing. And all of us has certain talents. And I seem to have a talent to do what a lot of people don't, and that's to really think out of the box and come up with solutions that a lot of people just think are too complicated to touch. And with reserving my right to speak again, I would like now to quit and open it up for any of you to ask questions you might have that I could answer specifically rather than just going on with my presentation. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Members, any questions? Representative O'Driscoll.
Can you just walk through what a transaction would look like? I mean, like little lines to boxes for me. I've talked to you about this before. I'm still not 100% sure how that's going to go. I've got a project, it's a construction project, it's supposed to come to a state bank. Tell me what the state bank is supposed to do at this point. Or do they
Somebody
get the
set
funds
up, yeah, they're going to set up my whiteboard, and I can sure do that just in a very few seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Dale.
And I don't mean to prolong the Mr. Chair. I just want folks to be able to kind of see the graphs that we're seeing on this.
Yeah, we, as long as it's quick, we would like to move on in about 10 more minutes.
Brevity is important, I understand.
Representative Hilty, is there anyone else you want to come down and speak towards this, or just Mr. Dale and the whiteboard?
I've got the whiteboard and I've got the pen.
Mr. Chair, I don't have any openings this time.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, with your permission, can I set this thing right here? Can most of you all see it? It's very simple. It's based exactly like the banks do now. Actually, I took it according to accounting, and that's how I learned this. And today, 100% of the money is created this way, what they call the T-chart. When you go to the bank and you ask for a loan, you simply, and I think everybody in this room has probably done that, correct? That you've asked for a loan. Okay, and I've done it many, many times. Okay, so when I do, they ask me how much I want to borrow, what I got in collateral, and then if we agree, they say, okay, would you please sign a promissory note? Then we're just going to use $100. Principal's the same. And that goes on my books as a liability to me and an asset to the bank. And then they take and go over into my checking account and create the money as a liability to the bank and an asset to the borrower. And just like that, they have monetized my property for their benefit, because they get interest and they don't pay me interest, and I now have purchasing power. I don't get the power to own, but I get the power to purchase. And there's a lot of difference between the two. Because I may have something in my possession and never get the right to actually own it. And that's actually what we do, because the Library of Congress says when they put in the Federal Reserve System that the new money would all be based on the mortgages of all the people in the United States on their property. That's what backs your currency. Which means that anybody that holds the debt could actually come take the property. Okay, now the actual, all that we propose to do is make one change. This is the change, the only change we'll make. Right now, this will go on probably as a goodwill asset to the people of Minnesota and to the bank. They will now get an asset, but there will be no liability created at that point. Everything else will be exactly the same. The bank then will turn this into money, into the checking account. You will now have not only the right to purchase and the ability to purchase, but you'll also achieve the right to own, because there won't be any debt. Now this money will flow in under this bill directly for the rebuilding and upgrading of our transportation system. I have personally contacted and met the guy over the phone that has developed a transportation system where they can surface the road with solar systems, solar panels, and they could actually generate all electricity this nation would need just off the surface of the roads. Can you imagine if we brought that to Minnesota and we funded him and got this going? Can you imagine the amount of economic growth we could start in this state right here, right now, and provide something that this nation needs? We wouldn't have to fool around with nuclear energy anymore because we wouldn't need it. And if you had a little bit of shortfall, as one person said, in Minnesota, you might not have enough sunshine. All you'd have to do is plug in some of this electricity from the wind towers we have, and this thing would work like a charm. And I think I've answered your question. Representative, if not, well...
Yep, Mr. Dale, Representative O'Driscoll has indicated his questions have been answered. And members, I'm sure there are other questions, but Mr. Dale said earlier that 33%, a third of the state banks are on the watch list. I don't want anyone in the crowd thinking that they got to rush out and get to their bank. We're not about to have bank failure. That's just state charter banks. Just because they're on the watch list doesn't mean there's a problem. It's just a watch list. Don't go home and take all your money out. Don't worry. Thank you, Mr. Dale. Or members, any other questions?
Chairman Hopperty, I would agree with that statement.
Thank you. Members, other questions for Mr. Dale? Representative Hilty will give you the